Cardano just pulled a samurai-style sneak attack on global trading desks, and while most people outside of Tokyo, they didn't even see the katana coming. Now, I'm about to show you why the quiet yen tsunami behind ADA might, or at least could, actually make last week's 15% pop look like pocket change. So, picture this. I'm scrolling through my charts at 3 AM. Yeah, that sacred hour when normal folks are dreaming of beaches, and I'm measuring candlesticks like a jeweler with insomnia. Now, something weird catches my eye, right? ADA's price is itching upwards, right? Nothing dramatic, but the real eyebrow kind of riser here is where the volume's actually coming from. Suddenly, the ADA JPY pair, that's ADA traded against the Japanese yen, is lighting up like, Shiba, crossing after dark. Now, we're kind of talking $121 million in a single 24-hour window. That's enough liquidity for a kind of Godzilla-sized splash. And here's the kicker. It actually kind of leapfrogged ADA USDT pair, historically the volume king, and almost $7 million. Well, by almost $7 million. So when you kind of see, yen beating Tether on an altcoin, well, something culturally epic is actually brewing. Now, naturally, my first reaction is, did someone spike my mocha? But only last month, yen volume barely kind of showed up on the radar. So I do what any kind of self-respecting crypto nerd does. I dive into the order books, and that's kind of where things get interesting, right? The yen's book's depth, right? The bids and the asks kind of stacked, within kind of 2% of the kind of mid price. It's kind of thin, just around, at least about $63,000 on the kind of buy side and around $100,000 on the sell side. So meanwhile, of course, ADA USDT has more than 1.6 million on either side. So it's kind of a buffet compared to a kind of Bentok's box in yen. The translation here, Japanese traders are swarming in, but they're playing kind of sushi chef kind of precision rather than kind of buffet mayhem. And that kind of makes every kind of chopstick jab move the price more dramatically. So if you like volatility, this is, well, your playground. Okay, so now here is where I start kind of connecting the dots. Charles Hoskinson, Cardano's I invented blockchains while kind of ranching in Wyoming founder, kind of paid a visit to a heavyweight lawmaker in Tokyo earlier this year. We actually covered it on the channel. Now, on the surface, it looked like a polite kind of photo opportunity, but zoom out and you see Japan quietly kind of tweaking crypto taxes, revisiting how digital assets are even classified. Now, Tokyo used to kind of slap unrealized gains with eye-watering rates. Now, well, there's talk of softening that stance. So you think Japanese investors missed that memo? Think again, there's not a chance of it. So remember, right, Cardano's roots are practically soaked in green tea. The project was, conceptualized in Osaka back in 2015. Its ICO saw 90% of buyers from Japan. And they even threw the launch party in Tokyo before most of us could spell staking. So if the kind of motherland is suddenly rolling out a friendlier tax, tamani, then, the hometown crowd is obviously grabbing, their kimonos and, staking ADA. So I hop into the free crypto Discord, by the way, you can jump into, there's a link in the description down below. And I asked the community's resident Japan expat, Kenji, what he's actually seeing on the ground. And well, he messages back, within seconds, probably fueled by Kenobi coffee, and tells me, local Twitter is buzzing with phrases like, ADA Matsuri. Matsuri means festival. Now, apparently, smaller, exchanges in Japan have, started flashy campaigns, adding ADA pairs next to BTC and Ethereum on the front page. So marketing teams love to ride a kind of national success story, and Cardano is basically blockchain sushi, right? Japan born or Japanese born, but globally consumed. Now, here's the funny side note then, right? Price discrepancies, right? They popped up during the frenzy. You had ADA JPY traded at the yen equivalent of 80.33 cents, while ADA USDT wobbled to 80.17 cents and 80.27 cents. So that's 0.2 of a cent. May sound rather trivial, but arbitrage bots were salivating. So I imagine them as kind of like tiny little ninjas slicing spread differentials like laser katanas. Now, the spread of the yen was very much wider too, 0.02% versus 0.01% on the USDT pair. So if you had the tech to kind of hop across exchanges fast enough, you could snag sushi money for, well, lunch. But let's go ahead and pump the brakes and talk about the risk here, because there's always a kind of wasabi sting hidden underneath the sesame, right? Now, thinner liquidity means a single whale dumping can create a price cliff that would make Mount Fuji jealous. A $63,000 bid wall evaporates faster than my paycheck at a crypto conference merch booth. Now that could, of course, spook newcomers and ironically, magnetize even more opportunists to kind of carve, roller coaster charts. Now, it's a classic crypto tug of war. Now, if you're a kind of a mid-sized Japanese hedge fund manager, you've got clients still haunted by the Mt. Gox saga. Yet these kind of at least I guess I should say, they see Western institutions jumping into Bitcoin ETFs, and suddenly Cardano, the academic blockchain with peer-reviewed everything, kind of feels like a safer, almost, scholarly bet. Couple that with a cultural, inclination towards homegrown innovation, and you kind of get a FOMO cocktail brewed stronger than a sake. Now, at this point, I can't resist kind of testing the waters myself, so I fire up my Blowfin account. If you're looking for the best up-and-coming crypto exchange, hit that link that's in the description down below and start trading alongside me. Anyway, I kind of grabbed a modest bag of ADA, and within minutes, the yen-driven green candles nudge my position into profit territory. Now, I swear, I hear the faint sound of kind of a shaman's rift every time ADA kind of ticks up a cent. And so the question that everyone's DMing me right now is this just a kind of flash in the pan hype cycle, or the start of something sustainable? And to answer that, let's unpack the macro stuff, right? Japan's economy has, flirted with deflation and negative interest rates for, well, forever, right? Savers there kind of earn practically ninja-level stealth returns as an invisible kind of entity. Now, crypto, especially a project that carries some home country pride, offers a spicy alternative, right? Plus, if regulators do in fact follow through on tax reductions, that's gasoline on the bonfire. So remember how South Korea's premium kind of pushed BTC way above kind of global prices in 2017? Well, history doesn't often repeat, but it does love kind of remixing its tracks. And of course, on the tech front, Cardano's Hydra scaling solution is inching closer to mainstream use. Japanese gamers and NFT artists I kind of chatted with, during the kind of recent Tokyo kind of meetup, are eyeing at least Hydra's low fees for, well, future projects. There's also even chatter in the dev circles about Osaka startups building supply chain tooling on Cardano. So think kind of tuna traceability from boat to sushi bar, right? If those pilots do in fact land, they could cement ADA as more than a speculative vehicle, turning it into a digital infrastructure with real-world loyalty. And there's nothing that ignites domestic enthusiasm quite like the promise of made in Japan tech going global. Still, we can't ignore the elephant in the kind of tatami kind of room here, right? Liquidity depth, right? The volume to kind of stay equivalent without insane slippage. Market makers need to beef up those order books. That means either Japanese exchanges incentivize deeper kind of books, or international desks list yen pairs to arbitrage the spread themselves. Now, I've checked the leaderboard on Bluefin, and while ADA USDT remains king, the yen pair is inching up the ranks, signaling the professional traders are already sniffing opportunity. Historically, once the big boys arrive with tighter spreads, retail confidence tends to follow. And here's a storyline twist worthy of any anime cliffhanger. Charles Hoskinson keeps teasing another trip to Japan. Now, this time hinting at partnerships with universities in Kyoto. If Cardano, secures academic grants or pilot programs on Japanese soil, you can bet national television will run puff pieces. Nothing spikes retail signups like seeing your local celebrity professor chatting with blockchain cowboys. Now, let me play devil's advocate. Right, we've witnessed, regional frenzies before. Remember, Turkey's love affair with Dogecoin, or Indonesia suddenly mooning over Shiba Inu. Right, those rallies, they often died when the hype cycle rotates. So what makes Japan's ADA surge different, at least in my view, is the fundamental history. Cardano isn't just piggybacking on a meme, right? It's returning to its kind of birthplace. That emotional resonance, can't actually be copy-pasted into another kind of geography overnight, right? Japanese culture places huge value on long-term commitment. Ask anyone who's lined up for decades-old manga series, right? If ADA, of course, becomes the blockchain equivalent of One Piece, brace yourself for a multi-season arc. Okay, so let's shift focus on the practical then. What should a retail trader do right now? Well, step one, you need to educate yourself. Don't just buy ADA because you saw a kind of Fuji-sized green candle on Twitter. Read up on Hydra, Mithril, and Cardano's treasury model. Step two, right? Use exchanges with solid liquidity and security. Yes, Bluefin checks those boxes. Step three, right? Hedge. If you're already kind of sitting on a stack of ADA but live outside of Japan, consider pairing it with a short kind of dated option or stop loss just in case Tokyo Whale decides to dump right before your lunch break. Okay, so quick anecdote then. My friend Maiko, a Kyoto kind of based quant, if you will, he told me that he's coding a bot that tracks yen order books and at least imbalances in real time. Right now, every time sell liquidity falls below 50 grand, his bot pings him like a karaoke machine stuck on max volume. Now, when I asked why 50, he grinned and said, that's the line between sushi roll dip and tsunami knife plunge. So you gotta love the kind of poetic kind of risk metrics to a degree. Now, what really made me bullish though wasn't just the numbers, it was actually the vibe. Now in our Discord, new Japanese members popped in daily this week, sharing screenshots of their first ADA buys like proud parents at a kindergarten art class or show. Of course, kindergarten being German, but we'll skip that for a moment. Now they're not just flaunting Lambos. They're actually talking about building DeFi tools for regional banks. And that kind of practically signals intent beyond just pump and dump. Meanwhile, of course, regulatory wins elsewhere are downright chilly. The US still kind of wrestles with the SEC lawsuits, and the EU's MiCA framework still looms. And even in Dubai, my own backyard, it tightens marketing rules. So Japan, once seen as conservative, is actually quietly positioning itself as Asia's crypto renaissance capital, if you will. If it lowers taxes, past Parliament, and you'll hear a collective kind of crypto sigh of relief echoing, from the region. So climax time. The 𝗕𝗓-𝗕𝗓 pair, it doesn't just represent a volume stat. It's actually a lighthouse. It signals that when a country with a tech-savvy population, favorable regulation on the horizon, and a cultural stake in a project decides to re-engage, well, things can snowball fast. So think of it like a dormant volcano, sending up its kind of first puff of steam. Right? Smart hikers know that there's a cue to kind of gear up, not necessarily pack up. And by the way, if you want to keep tabs on these kind of lava flows in real time, jump into our free crypto Discord server via the link that's down below. That's kind of where we dissect stuff like the yen liquidity over morning coffee and share Hydra dev notes, and of course, yes, laugh at my horrible attempts to pronounce all these various Japanese terms, which I've butchered throughout this video. And you can of course correct me on the voice chat. And so, wrapping it all up, here's the kind of postcard summary, right? Cardano just posted a 15% weekly climb. But the real show is behind the curtain, where Japanese yen volumes kind of sprinted to $121 million, wrestling the kind of silver medal from tether pairs. Now, liquidity is thinner, spreads are wider, prices, hair higher, meaning that volatility is the name of the game. Now, historical ties, Hoskinson's political networking, and looming tax cuts could actually turn this into a multi-chapter saga rather than just a cameo. So, just remember, romance without risk management can break more hearts than a cherry blossom breakup montage.